Welcome back to another episode of the Team to Beat Miami Heat podcast. My name is Amir. Before I get into today's episode, just want to thank everybody for following the podcast on Spotify. Also want to thank everybody for subscribing to the YouTube channel. If you are watching this on YouTube today, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. So for today's episode, I want to talk about a report that came out basically saying that Jimmy Butler is not going to sign his extension with the Miami Heat or any other team for that matter, and he will test out free agency after next season. So Shams Charnia reported that Jimmy Butler will play out next season on his existing contract and will not seek an extension, and they will revisit this conversation perhaps next summer. So Jimmy Butler um, opting out essentially is a possibility now because he does have a player option after the 2024-2025 season, and Jimmy Butler, who's going to be 35 at the beginning of this upcoming season, has 2 years remaining on his contract. So next year he's guaranteed to make $48.8 million, and again in 2025 he has a player option for $52.4 million. And if Jimmy was to sign that extension, which he was going to request July 7th when he was eligible for it, essentially it would have been a 2-year, $113 million max extension. And so technically it's only one extra year. So it would mean that he would still make 48.8 million next season, and then that 2025 season, that player option would have rose from 52.4 to 54.3. So he would have got a $2 million raise. Plus, he would have got one extra season, the 2026-2027 season, when he would be around 37, 38 years old. He would be making $58.6 million. So right now, with any extension that Jimmy Butler would be able to sign with the Miami Heat or any other team, would be 2 years maximum. And so by him waiting until next summer, Butler will be eligible for more years on a new deal. So essentially, he can get a 3-year max with the Miami Heat or with another team. So Jimmy Butler is going to most likely be a free agent after next season and not pick up that player option, seeking more and a longer 3 to 4 year deal, which could be projected to be worth, if it's a 4-year deal, $243 million with the Miami Heat, or a 3-year deal for $171 million versus that 113 that he's eligible for currently. So what can we expect from Jimmy Butler next season? Jimmy Butler at age 35, he might be slowing down a little bit, but not a ton. Um, he still averaged 21 points, 5.3 rebounds, 5 assists last season. But again, only played 64 games. Those 64 games, he probably would have played 6 or 7 more if he wasn't out for personal reasons. So, I mean, he did miss games that were not due to injury. But 64 is the most he's ever played in a Miami Heat uniform. That was last season. So, Jimmy is going to be extra motivated. He has to be, because he needs to play and show that he is durable still at this age, still capable of playing well during the regular season and capable of making sure that this Miami Heat is a at least top 6 seed and not a play-in team, and can avoid the play-in tournament, um, and not play in the play-in tournament for 3 seasons in a row and have a harder path in the playoffs. And we saw what happened last year. They lost the first play-in game, and then they had to play against the Celtics, and they got destroyed because Jimmy Butler was hurt and Terry Rozier was hurt. But either way, even if they were 100% healthy, the Celtics still would have been a favorite. They were the number 1 seed, the best offensive team in the NBA, second best defensive team in the NBA, and one of the most elite scoring offenses in NBA history. And they dominated the regular season. They had a lucky, easy path, but they still dominated. Uh, Even though I hate the Celtics, you got to give them their credit. But either way, a contract year for Jimmy Butler could be very interesting for the Miami Heat. We know Pat Riley said that he wants his players to be available, and he mentioned Jimmy Butler's availability. And he mentioned last season they talked to Bernie Lee about him playing more games. He's in a contract year. This guy better play at least 65. I mean, he played 64 last season. Again, that was the most. He needs to play. He needs to play ideally 72 games. Like letting Jimmy miss 10 games seems fine. But the other issue too is if he plays 72 games, you can't rest and be passive and not aggressive um, in like 20 of those 72 games. If he does that, the Miami Heat will most likely be a playing game team again, especially if they don't make any moves and sign any or trade, excuse me, for any um, all-star or star level type players like a Brandon Ingram or like a DeJounte Murray. If we don't get a player like that and we only add a, let's say, a Torian Prince or another veteran minimum wing player like a Jay Crowder or someone like that, then it's not going to move the needle. And Jimmy's going to have to play balls to the wall all season long to carry us. And I think if he does play 72 games and if he doesn't load manage in games, this Miami Heat team with a healthy roster, with Jaime Jaquez emerging as a top rookie last year, with Jovic getting some time finally as the stretch four next to Bam Adebayo, with drafting Khalil Ware, with having Terry Rozier for a full season, for having maybe Tyler Hero potentially come off the bench, which would be ideal, having a 20-point scorer off the bench. Duncan Robinson emerging the last season and a half as not only a 3-point specialist, but someone who could put the ball on the floor a little bit and play make a little bit. Um, this Miami Heat team could be a top 4 team, maybe 5 in the East, especially if they're healthy and especially if Jimmy Butler plays balls to the wall in a contract year. So, could the Miami Heat still trade Jimmy Butler? That is a possibility, but Jimmy doesn't want to be traded right now at this point. So, it's up to the Miami Heat. If they feel for some reason by the trade deadline in February next season that Jimmy Butler is demotivated, doesn't want to be in Miami for some reason at that point, maybe they can trade him, uh, assuming that he will walk away from the Miami Heat and sign with another team as a free agent. So the Heat could still trade Butler this summer, but I doubt that's going to happen, and I don't want that to happen. Um, how does this impact the Miami Heat's finances moving forward? So when Butler opts out next year, the Heat could escape the luxury tax. They could create nearly 30 million in cap space if they don't take on more long-term salary this season. So that again depends on who will they trade for. If they get like a Brandon Ingram, he does have some years left on his contract, I believe. Could be wrong on there. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But signing someone like a Zach Levine, for instance, which I hope the Heat don't do necessarily because of his contract. I like Zach Levine as an offensive player, but he does have an injury history, and he's making like 215 million. He still has like 3 years left, so that could put the Miami Heat in cap hell. But either way, that would create major flexibility for Miami because the Miami Heat are building around Bam Adebayo. Obviously, they just gave him his 3-year max, so congrats to Bam. But either way, very interesting move. Um, Jimmy doesn't seem disgruntled, and the Miami Heat wanted to take a wait and see approach for this extension, and their wish has been granted right now. So what Pat Riley said in his offseason presser, will be true essentially, and they'll come to revisit this conversation next year. So let me know what you guys think about the whole Jimmy Butler extension thing. Do you think the Miami Heat are going to give him a lucrative 3 to 4 year deal if he balls out next season? Or do you think if Jimmy balls out, he still has the ability and possibility of going to another team? What do you think will happen next season? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.